So we've established that through the course of this class, what we're trying to do is take a young piece of nursery stock, like you have in front of you, and we're going to get it on the path to looking like an old ancient tree in miniature. When we talk about building a bonsai, we always kind of start from the bottom up. So when it comes to that, looking at our tree from the bottom up, first thing here is the pot that we have our tree in. So the word bonsai means pot and tree. Or pot and planting, pot and tray. Taking those and putting those together, that's what makes a bonsai. So bonsai isn't a species of plant. It's any plant that we take and we put into a pot or a ceramic vessel or some sort of vessel where we restrict the amount of space it has for root growth. And restricting that root growth is what gives us a small tree in miniature. These trees, Portulacara afra, grow to be 15 to 20 feet tall in nature. So not massive for a tree, but pretty massive for a succulent. So this tree here, the reason that this 6-year-old tree is not on its way to being 15 to 20 feet tall is because it's been kept in a pot. That has restricted its growth. It's restricted its battery and how much energy it has to grow every year. So instead of giving long, lengthy growth as it would normally, we get much smaller, more compact growth that we want for bonsai. So that gives us a tree that looks like it's miniaturized, but also that little bit of growth and that kind of miniaturized growth that it gets really ages a tree significantly faster. So you get what I call bonsai years, like dog years, where a tree will look 10 times as old. For spending 1 year in a bonsai tree, it's like 10 years in nature. So that's a really big part of what we're doing here. So getting it into the pot is going to be our first thing. But then also looking at the rest of this tree and talking about what are the things that make a tree look older that we can accomplish today in this class. And one of the things, again, from the bottom up, we have the pot, and then coming right up here, we have these roots that are crawling along on the surface here, showing through, peeking up through our moss and everything. And these roots are really highly prized in bonsai. In Japanese, they call these Nebari, which just means root flare. So that having these exposed roots gives a tree a lot of character and a lot of age. It's one of those things that is a great visible indicator of the age of a tree. Because trees in nature, their roots grow underground. That's where roots do what roots do. They're collecting water and nutrients for the tree and holding the tree up. They don't want to be above the surface. But over time, really old trees, as their roots get bigger and expand and grow like every other part of the tree, it's going to be loosening up the soil above it. And so the roots that are closest to the surface, as they loosen up the soil, wind and rain and the weather will erode away that soil over years and months, or years, decades, and centuries. And slowly those roots will become exposed and actually push themselves out and show on the surface here. So really old trees will have exposed Nebari crawling roots along the ground. And that's a great visual indicator of age, and it's something that's highly sought after in bonsai. Having really nice roots, funky character can make your tree look significantly older. Gives it a really great kind of, strong base, really tying the tree to the pot and showing that, I'm a really old tree. I've been here a long time. I'm literally outlasting the earth around me. So luckily for us, we don't have to wait for our roots to push their way through the surface and have weather and eroding and all of that. We're in bonsai, we can take some shortcuts. So what we can do is actually dig down and find those first roots where they come out of our trunk here. And we can just say, all right, now I find those roots, uncover, see what we have for our own Nebari on our tree, and be like, all right, that's what's going to be sitting on top of my soil and my planting here where I plant the tree. And that's going to help us make our first design decision about our tree. So see, we've got our tree here. So what we're going to be doing, everybody's got their piece of nursery stock here, your nice tree. Let's take and empty everything out of your bin you have here. The bin's going to be to capture our soil. We've got some bonsai soil here we'll talk about later. We've got scissors, you've got wire, you have a chopstick, so we're going to use the chopstick to dig through the soil there. And we also have this nice colorful postcard here. This has aftercare instructions for your tree, so this is going to be important. You're going to want to keep this and bring this home. But even more important right now, take this and put this over your drink, because if you don't get dirt in your drink, I might. So that's your final warning. There's nothing wrong with our soil. I drink a pint of it a week doing these classes, but other people are a little bit more squirmish than me. So you've been warned. Cover your drink up for your own safety. So then we're going to take our tree here, do a little peace sign or a Spock thing there. Take it, squeeze that out and take our nursery container out. These you can collect among your on the table, and one of the assistants will come around to pick these up. You're not going to need these anymore. But then we have our tree here. So important thing before we start digging into everything here is really to understand where we're going with this. So what we want to do is take our tree and dig from the bottom down. Find that Nebari where the roots are first coming out of the trunk, but we don't want to be bare rooting the tree. We don't want to be taking all of the soil off here. We actually want to leave the sides and the bottom unaffected here. So we're just going to be taking the tree, or taking the soil apart kind of bit by bit. So from the top down until we find the roots. Then once we find the roots in the Nebari, we can look at that, and then we can make that first design decision that I was talking about, which is figuring out where's the front of our tree. Once we have, the Nebari, we see the Nebari, the trunk line, and the branching. Those are the three things that we can then use to make a choice. All right, looking at this tree from every direction, where do I think is the best front for my tree? This tree I've been showing you in this one direction here. This is where the front of the tree is. This is the way it's meant to be viewed. You can look at the tree from all different angles from the back here, but clearly this is where the viewers is meant to be, and this is the perspective that most people are going to be looking at the tree. So you notice I've got nice roots here. They come out to the left and the right, giving me a nice wide base to my tree. So having a Nebari that spreads out to the side and gives you a big base is a great thing. If you have really interesting roots, you're going to want to make sure they're visible from the front there, usually putting them off to the left or the right to help give you more of that big wide flared base. Also, having a clear view of the trunk from the front here. You don't want to have big branches directly in front of the trunk, at least for the bottom 2/3 of the tree, because we want to be able to see there. That's kind of the main attraction. Be like if Mona Lisa had bangs that went over her lips or something. You don't want to be covering up the most exciting part of people who are going to want to see about the tree. It's fine to have branches to the sides and the backs and things like that, but we want to be able to see the trunk line. So if you have a really good Nebari and trunk line, but you do end up having a branch that's coming directly out in front of the tree, it'd be good to take that branch and kind of angle it maybe 45 degrees to the left or the right. See if you still get a good angle that takes that branch off the center of the front of the trunk there. Worst case scenario, if it's a branch that you don't mind cutting off, we can cut it off so we can see the trunk line. So that's the decisions we'll make there. We're going to be doing here, we're going to be taking our chopstick, putting it into the soil, maybe about a centimeter or half an inch down here, and pull directly out. So we are going to be ripping some small roots. That's perfectly fine. This is going to be taking apart the roots that are circling in here, but leaving the roots that come radially off the trunk, which are the roots that we're trying to preserve. So as we dig down here, my Nebari actually is pretty high up on this tree. I've got some nice roots already showing right here. So you'll see my roots are coming out on this tree very much kind of down and together here. It'd be nicer if they were a little more splayed out, but this is what we're looking for. So once you get down to this level here, we don't need to go any further down into the soil. I can see these roots. If you have small, fine feeder roots, little baby hair size roots on top of your thicker ones here, it's good to pluck those out of the way. We really want to focus on the bigger character roots up top here. So we can pluck those out of the way to see. And also I like to follow those bigger, thicker roots and just kind of uncover them, take that soil off and see what they're doing. Sometimes you have big, interesting roots that are covered just by a little bit of dirt there. So I kind of try to follow those out so I can really see what's going on with my Nebari of my tree. So I have, here's the Nebari of this tree. And you notice I haven't touched the sides of the tree or the bottom there. So now that I have this, I can pick the front of my tree nicely here. And let's say, so looking at this, I really like the roots from this direction is kind of the most interesting there. I think that looks pretty good. I like that a lot. So I'm gonna take that as the front of my tree. So I have my pot here. That's gonna be the front of my tree, and this is the front of my pot, always choosing one of the wider sides of the pot here. Take that and say, all right, if I wanna get this in here, I need to take off a little on this side and a little here and there. So what I do is I come back and I say, all right, I kind of just tease it out of the front here, teasing out that soil. I'm just taking enough off to get the tree to fit into the pot, maybe with about a 1/4 inch of space around the outside, maybe just like a pinky width size around the outside. I'm gonna be filling that up with the bonsai soil like shown you earlier. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but that's what we're trying to do to get our tree to fit in nicely here. So I'm getting closer. Still just a little bit more. But we want to leave this section of roots. We want to have a section that hasn't been loosened up. You know, the roots are still untouched and attached to the soil there. This is what we're going to be zip tying over here. This is going to help hold the tree in nice and firm into our pot when we repot it here. So I think I'm getting pretty close. So right there, nice, fits into my pot, boom, sits, set right in the front, like I want my tree sitting there. So I've got the tree fitting in very nicely there. Got a little bit of space around the outside. I can fit my pinky in there. That's where we're gonna be filling with more bonsai soil and the little moat around the outside there. And then you'll notice here that I have these long dangly roots as well. So what we want to do actually is these long dangly roots, those roots, if we left them, would already be around the outside of the pot. So they'd be going around the outside of the pot. We'd have to like kind of loop them in there. We don't want that. Roots don't like growing at the edge of the pot there. It's the first place to get too hot or too cold, too wet, too dry. Roots tend to get there and just kind of circle around looking for a better place to grow, and they mat over each other, and then the pot becomes what we refer to as root bound. So rather than putting those roots already in a situation that's not going to be ideal for them, we can just come in here and cut the roots back to about where they'd hit the edge of the pot. And what that does is gets a nice clean cut at the edge of the root. The root can easily compartmentalize that damage, repair itself, and it actually encourages that root, instead of just growing long and long and long and looping around the outside of the tree, it encourages that root to start branching back further closer to the trunk of the tree. So you get more branching roots close to the base of the tree there, which are the roots that we're gonna be able to use in the lifetime of this tree as a bonsai. It's always gonna have that restricted space. We want more small, fine feeder roots close into the base of the tree. So you see, I've given that a pretty good haircut there. And now we can see, all right, now my tree fits really nicely in here. So once you get your tree to this level here where it fits in, great, you're perfect. So take your tree, set it aside there. So once you get to this section, you can set your tree down. We'll come around, we'll collect this extra nursery soil out of your way so that we have a nice clean area to actually pot the tree.